glitch. This will take a couple of seconds, of course. Thank you. So, this is technology, doesn't matter.
Can you help me? Just hold this.
We've got to live with such technological glitches. Okay.
So just that way, people are still kind of coming back. Just wait like maybe a minute.
Minute. Yeah, fine.
Maybe we can start reading.
So we are talking about like water seeks its own levels, minds also seek its own levels. You are comfortable in that particular milieu, that group. This is what kind of is the secret of the mind. You may not realize it, but you make yourself fit or unfit for a particular group, a particular level of existence by your own karma. It's always like that. Don't blame the world. You got to blame your own strength in performing karma. And once you perform one good action, it will lead you to the second good action, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. Your mind will start rising higher and higher, and you will seek higher and higher and higher levels of goodness. So, here you have the Lord telling Arjuna, if you don't work, people will emulate you. As simple as that. And if they are going to emulate you, they will say, Arjuna ran away from this battle. He's a coward. He gave up his ideals for immediate gratification, to save his own skin. He is not a hero. There, you are now leading people astray. So you better be careful what you do. That is why it's important. We'll take this idea up in the next verse because that's important, and it's spoken of in a more clearly, in a clear way by the Lord. So we'll take the first part of the verse. Karmanyeva hi samsiddhim astita janakadayah lokasangrahame vapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. Yeah. So, in the old days, there were people, kings, like Janaka and others, Janaka Adaya, and Ashwapati and all these. They were these real great kings, They were rulers, they were kings looking after the details of the day-to-day running of an empire, yet they could have the time and the inclination for higher spiritual pursuits. That is important. We all complain, oh, we don't have time. That's a kind of a mantra nowadays. We don't have time. We are so busy. Really? When people say such things, I have only one kind of answer to that. You are busy without being really busy. What do you mean busy without busy? That is, you have not trained your mind to focus. Once the mind is focused, you can do more work in less time. Then the mind daydreams. Instead of focusing, your mind is daydreaming. There you're losing all the energy. When the mind is trained, the mind is disciplined, the mind is focused, you can do a lot more work. So, next time you say, I don't have the time. Well, blame yourself and try to do a little better. Why? Because in the old days, these kings, can you imagine kings? And in those days of absolute monarchy, the kings had absolute power. They could think such high thoughts, attain perfection. And in the Upanishadic literature, you'll find a host of kings. In fact, the class of teachers which are recognized as class of teachers, the Brahmin, they used to go at times to the kings to learn. And the kings used to say, this knowledge is not with you, it's with us, the kings. And that's why we rule the world. Yeah, this knowledge can help you rule the world, make you a ruler, and a spiritual ruler, of course. So here we have, for Janaka and others, strove to attain liberation through action itself. Now, there are two, you can say, themes here. Now, we know that Janaka had attained perfection, and yet people saw that he was constantly working, ruling his kingdom, and ruling his kingdom not like a despotic ruler, not like a despot, but like a father. The king is like a parent to all the subjects, the people. These are the godly kings, and these were the godly kings. Now, if Janaka has attained perfection and people do see Janaka still engaged in karma, actions, it means one thing. That is, the commentator saying, while continuing in that state of liberation, the person is liberated. Janaka and other kings have attained a state of liberation, and continuing in that state of liberation, what happens is, because of the past momentum of all his karma, he continues to kind of work. Sri Ramakrishna says, and Holy Mother also says, when a person is released from a prison, before getting into a prison, that person was a clerk. So when the person is released, what does that person do? Well, he goes being his old self, doing clerical work. Of course, we're not talking about today. Those guys who go in and they come out, doing the same old things. But what happens in the state of liberation? Before you attained liberation, you worked your way through it. You attained liberation. And the force of that past momentum keeps on rolling. So that even pushes you towards doing that same work you were doing. For what? There is one thing that is, people will see Janaka and other kings still working. They will not see a king who is lazy, apparently. That person has attained liberation. He keeps on working. So what? So people will say, if our king is so active and doing things about being responsible, we also need to do a little something. But Janaka and others are under the impulsion of past momentum. They have already attained liberation. They have nothing to gain from work anymore. So what do others gain? An exemplar, a model, an ideal. And that's why they keep on working. It's not calculated, you see. Past momentum is driving the present actions. Perfect. That's what it's. So the Lord says, this will lead people on the right path. That person has attained everything through work. He doesn't have to attain anything more from work. Liberation is the highest. Perfection is the highest thing. So, now in case Janaka has not attained liberation and is striving towards that, then also his life becomes a kind of a model for us. So gradually this person through this work had attained the state of liberation. Either you see the liberated person here performing actions work so that people will have a kind of a role model. One. Secondly, that person itself is under the impulsion of his or her past actions. He cannot do anything otherwise. So all these past memories, past actions keep on impelling you. So the Lord says, Janaka and others are the kings, they had attained liberation. They had attained perfection. And what did they do? So they kept on working. Why? For the good of the world. That's a massive, you can say, idea. It's called Lokasangraham evapi. With the view, sampashan, with the view of doing good to the world, of not letting people going astray. You work, kartum arhasi, karma kartum yasa. Why? We'll take this up in the next verse. Like I said, a kind of a preamble is in order here. We all are embodied. That is, we have a body. We have a sensory system and we have a motor system. You cannot have a person with just a sensory system. You see, that person is half a person. There are some people who are paralyzed, kind of paralytic. They can hear, they can see, they can think also, but they cannot do anything. They become like vegetables. That's why evolution has designed us with both the systems. You have a sensory input and a motor output. And both these systems are here in the brain and translated down to the nerves and muscles and the bones and everything. So every thought has a counterpart, action. The data comes in and that is translated. Everything has a counterpart. Now in case data comes in and is not translated into action, you are half a person. And evolution has driven us down this path. We have watched things, we have watched people, we have watched the prey, and we have watched predators for millions of years. Don't think that the humans are just a few 100 years old or 1,000 years old, learning with tottering steps, trying to maneuver this world. Oh no. We have a millions and millions and billions years of experience behind us. We are not new. We are pretty old. And this is the idea of embodiment. We see things and we learn things. And that is what kept us from being extinct. Like there are many species that are extinct, getting extinct, of course, mainly because of us. That's bad. We would have got extinct if we would not have this sensory apparatus, those highly kind of limited Yet it has helped us survive. And the other side of the sensory system is the motor system. If you see a snake crawling towards you, you're going to see the snake, but you need to take evasive actions. You've got to run or you've got to strike at it. Otherwise, you would have died. Yeah, of course. Oh, that's a big snake, the beautiful snake. And the snake bites you. Couldn't do anything about that. We survived on these two systems. We understood what is a prey and what is a predator. And we ourselves are both the prey and the predator. Like we are a prey for the lions and the tigers. Hey, that's a nice juicy guy that's standing there doing nothing, with a mouth open and standing stock still. But looking at us, let's take him down. And we are predators also. How did we become master predators? We are weak. We did it through combination. We combined. We built a system called a society, a tribe or race or whatever. We became masters of this universe by combining our actions with the others. We learned to harmonize with the others. And that is why we became so dominant. We looked at others, watched others, studied others, and developed those skills within ourselves. So we could function as a unit now. We are not individual human beings taking a thin, long spear and trying to kill a woolly mammoth. You know what? You know what happens. You go with a spear alone to the woolly mammoth, you're off. Our ancestors, they went in a team. They learned teamwork. And that is why we survived. So, we watched each other's actions. There is something called the social intelligence. You see a flock of birds, starlings flying, or a school of fish swimming. It sees its neighbor. What is doing? A slight movement in the neighbor, that is transmitted down to the next fish. That person, that fish or that bird also reorients itself. So one small movement somewhere, any part of the school of fish or a flock of bird is transmitted to the whole group. A predator comes and the fish or the bird nearest to the predator moves a little, and that movement is watched and again imitated by all the others. It's a tremendous, you can say, power that we have developed by watching our neighbors, not to see who's bigger and who's richer, but we can understand behavior. And that is what we have learnt, and that's the greatest survival technique that we have learned, not other techniques. Oh yeah, we learned how to kind of build fires. Nothing new. We've seen lightning, etc. Fire and the kind of wheel, etc. But this is what has really spurred our growth, our evolution. Combining. And what is the principle behind combination? It is to see and emulate actions. You get in something, the data, and you got to translate it. That is why saying you ought to perform your duties, keeping also in view the prevention of humankind from going astray.
We have 10 minutes of battery.
Great. So here the kings have been kind of given as kind of examples of why we should kind of work. So the 21st verse, that is it's a remarkable verse. Whatever a superior person does, another person does that very thing. Whatever that superior person upholds as authority, ordinary persons follow that. Yad yada charati sreshtas tat tat eva taro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. Yeah, so we had spoken about some time back about there's something called the mirror neurons. We can mirror other people's actions, their thoughts. You can understand other person's mind. You can plunge into that other person's mind by observation. By observing that person, you can understand the person's mind. People say, can you read minds? Everyone can read minds. Even animals can read your own mind. You go along with a stone in your hand in front of that animal, see that what happens? That's going to flee. Yeah, it reads your mind. Everybody can read minds. It's not a kind of a novelty that only certain people. But we have not been doing this thing with attention. So when we see others, the neurons, the mirror neurons which are in our head, will mirror that action. And we can get an insight into that person's thoughts. There are something called a micro expressions also. That those, these guys, psychics and magicians and, these guys or mentalists, they have a tremendous power of observation. They can observe these micro expressions. Police and detective and, everybody can do that. Even gamblers do that. So we have something which mirrors what is before us. Whether it's a person, whether it's a bird or it's an animal or anything, they also can understand your mind. So when a superior person, whatever a superior person does, superior in what sense? Moral superiority, or intellectual superiority, or even spiritual superiority, whatever it is. So whatever that person does, another person does that very thing. That's a kind of it's a universal truth that is being declared. You don't emulate a guy has got who he or she has got no stuff in them. You're wasting your time. Perfectly. You will try to emulate what is the best, what is the noblest, what is superior. So when you judge your actions, you must be able to read your own actions. That am I emulating the highest moral actions? Am I emulating the highest intellectual actions? If it's not, then you need to have an ideal replaced. People who go for these lower ideals, when they see some people who are they're rich and famous, and they're attracted, they want to become rich and famous, and they keep on striving. But when they see the other side of that rich and famous person's life rotten, they get disillusioned. And this is what's happening. We face disillusionment after disillusionment. Because we have not studied that other person we want to emulate properly. If you would have seen that person's feet are made of clay, that person is fragmented, that person has got scores of problems. Do you want those things? Do you want to emulate that? No. So there's another responsibility given to people who are ideal, you're great in something, so that people will look and people will emulate and learn and then form the chain reaction. Like Sri Ramakrishna will say, the couple of villagers, they had gone for a feast and some dish was served to them. They couldn't recognize what it is, couldn't identify what it was. So they asked, have these gentlemen, Babura, have the gentlemen eating that? If the gentlemen have eaten that, then it's good for us. Good enough for us. We'll eat it. So that's what. Here we have this idea, if whatever a superior person does, another person does that very thing. So it becomes a moral responsibility for you to behave correctly because you are being watched by people. People say, oh, my children, they are disrespectful. Have you behaved correctly before the children? Where have the children learned? First from you, then from his peers, from the school, and everywhere that person sees only false smiles and a mask trying to make this person feel, oh yeah, you are there, we'll tolerate you. That person has not seen solid ideals. It's from the very beginning, if the child learns from its parents and from its neighbors and from its teachers the highest ideal through their behavior, that child will grow into a perfect citizen, a perfect, you can say, spiritual person. So whatever the superior person upholds as authority, yat pramanam kuruti, whatever, this I know to be true. How do you know? I know. People will take that as authority. We stop here for now. Obviously, we'll take this up next Thursday. So stay tuned in. We have again tomorrow two Swami, Swami Atma Tattvananda and Swami Atma Vidyananda, giving the talk on the Swami Abhedananda, the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, at 7:30 tomorrow evening. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.